everyone, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Bianca.
And welcome back to the Preservice PODSQUAD podcast.
So today we are taking another session on teacher burnout and stress. And we're going to be talking to Olivia Haas, who is a former Preservice member, and now she's in her second year of teaching. And she's in Somerset County and she's teaching high school math. And we're really excited to talk to her and hear about her first couple of years experience and, you know, how that's related to different stresses and challenges going on during the day. So, Olivia, do you want to say hi?
Hi.
Hello. It's so nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
We are very happy to have you. And as a person who is interested in teaching high school math, I'm excited. I'm very excited that you're here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, like beyond what I said generally?
So beyond teaching just math, I also started coaching for the first time this year. I coached cross country in the fall, and I'll be coaching spring track as an assistant coach in the spring. So I do a lot of extra curriculars at school, I guess you could say, and then outside of school I make time to like see my friends, see my family, and then I also tutor a lot on the side.
I'm sure your days are super busy and packed. I love that you mentioned that you're a coach. That's something I'm personally interested in as well, getting involved in athletics in the school, but also maybe being an advisor to, you know, different clubs in the school. So do you think that being a coach and being involved in the extracurricular side of the school has enhanced your experience so far?
I definitely like it, and I have so much fun with the students. I think it's good that they see me outside of the classroom so they know I'm not just a walking calculator all the time. But you definitely form those deeper bonds once you show that you're interested in what they're interested in. And it's great to see them do something that they're good at outside of the classroom too.
Absolutely. So I know your days must be absolutely packed. So just so we kind of have a visual of what your day looks like, can you just kind of give us a breakdown of like a typical day in your life?
Typical day in my life, I wake up at 5 a.m. and
that's rough.
Sometimes 4:30 if I'm really feeling ambitious. But I get to work the latest at 7. If I get there after 7, I get there behind the buses and behind the parents. So 7 is my cutoff. I gotta get there before then. And 6:30 is my prime time, because if I get there at 6:30, I have 30 minutes to myself. And then at 7 o'clock, that's when a student, if they have extra questions about homework or math, like they'll usually come in around 7. Or my coworkers will come in and we'll chat before the day actually starts at 7:30. And my day is a slow start for the school day. I have a first period bathroom duty, a second period prep, and then 5 classes in a row with a 24-minute lunch in between. But after that, I would typically go to practice in the fall until 4 o'clock, and then 30 minutes to myself, and I tutor at the library from 4:30 until whatever time I feel like I don't want to tutor anymore. But I try not to tutor every day, just so I have at least 1 or 2 days a week that are just for me in the afternoon.
How long are your class periods usually? You said you have 5 back-to-back. Are those how long usually?
They are about 50 minutes. So
okay.
I have 2 50-minute classes in a row, and then my lunch, and then 3 50-minute classes after that.
Do you feel like those 50 minutes are enough to get done what you need to get done, especially with like extensive math lessons?
I think they are. I had the opportunity to teach in another school prior to Hillsborough where they had block scheduling, and they had one class was an hour and 20 minutes. And I felt like that was a great amount of time for the honors courses. But for my college prep classes, it just felt like too long to be sitting in one spot, to be going through so much math. So I think 15 minutes a day, you can really focus on certain topics. And then the next day you can do something new if you're not reinforcing something you learned previously.
That makes sense. In my head, I thought it was block scheduling, so I'm glad you said that, because I didn't realize you meet with them every single day. So that makes more sense. 50 minutes is definitely enough. Usually, if you do get to school in that, it sounds like 6:30 is like the ideal perfect time.
Perfect time.
Yeah. What do you usually do during those 30 minutes? Like, do you said you take time to yourself, but what does that kind of look like?
So that time to myself is me. I'll like run, do any last minute copies. Sometimes I start getting myself ahead of the game, and I take that time in the morning as well. But it's just nice to just sit through and like relax. I have my coffee, I'll drink my coffee, I'll go through my emails, because students and parents and whoever will email you in the middle of the night because they think you're awake even though you're not. But it's just my time to relax before I have to go off to my duty and run around. And sometimes at the end of the day, I'll just leave like papers everywhere, which isn't the most like organized thing for me to do. But I like to get the classroom organized because someone else teaches in my room first period. So I try to make it look presentable for them so that they're ready to start when the day starts.
I know for me, routine is really important. That's kind of how I structure my day. So do you feel like you have a solid routine down that helps you organize your day?
To an extent, I do. I think some days I do. I've learned to like not be too routine, because sometimes when I try to stay on top of things too much, that's when the anxiety builds up. So I'm trying to like let loose a little bit more and just know that like Monday, lesson plans are due, make sure they're prepared for that. But if I'm not having every single detail set in place, I recognize that's okay, because plans change every day depending on what happens. So especially during the snow days. So when things like that happen, I try not to get too worked up over whether or not my routine's in place or not.
And it sounds like it's important to be flexible too, you know? Like you said, you make plans, but I'm sure even like in the middle of your classes, they might change, like without a snow day or like external forces impacting it. Outside of the classroom though, do you use any like self-care practices? Whether that's like after school. I know you said you have like a busy after school life with coaching and tutoring, but is there something that you do like before bedtime where, you know, whenever you have downtime that helps you de-stress?
When I have a downtime, I do try to go to the gym when I can. So there's one day a week that's my like free, no tutoring day, and I definitely go to the gym on that day, and I try to go on the weekend as well, just because my doctor says I need to exercise, and also because it makes me feel better. And then on the side, I like to read as well, and that really helps me before bed, because then I'm not looking at my phone or looking at screens, and I'm definitely not looking at schoolwork. So reading and going to the gym are my two things for myself.
Yeah, I mean, all that is really important. And I think a big thing too is relationships. And we talked a little bit about building stronger relationships with students by getting to know them outside of the classroom and being involved in extracurriculars. So have you been able to build relationships with colleagues and kind of build friendships there? And if you have, how has that really helped you like navigate your school day?
I got so lucky with where I am. I love my coworkers so much, because the math department at Hillsborough, they're just so welcoming, and they genuinely want you to be there, and they genuinely want to help you to be the best that you can be. So my first day was welcomed with open arms, and everyone was so willing to share everything they have. I think I have at least 10 people's Google Drives with every single document they've ever made. But beyond that, we have lunch together whenever we can. We will say hi to each other in the hallways, or when we're prepping, we prep together sometimes too. And then every once in a while, when it's someone's like birthday, or if it's someone's retiring, like last year someone retired and we had a retirement party for the math department, like we always try to hang out with each other too. So I just got lucky with where I am, because I know not all schools are like that.
That's so nice. I feel like having a collaborative environment helps not only, you know, the faculty and the teachers in the math department in your case, but also the students too. I feel like if they sense that there is like a good energy between teachers and there's just like a sense of community, it kind of makes them feel more uplifted, I think. Would you agree with that?
I think they agree with that. Like, there's a teacher who also graduated from the same college as me, now works at Hillsborough, but we're 1 year apart. And the students know that we're friends. So sometimes my students will go into her classroom and they've developed a relationship with her because they know that I'm friends with her as well. It's really sweet. So I think when your students see that people like their job and like their coworkers, they like going there a little bit more because they see that you're also into it.
That makes sense. I'm actually starting my first practicum experience right now at TCNJ, and so that's like an observation experience 1 day a week. And so far I've been observing a few math classes, so I feel like although I'm history secondary ed, I can relate to a little bit. But a theme that I've been picking up on in these math classes is the importance of creating an environment where students feel comfortable asking questions and not afraid to make mistakes, because obviously a part of math is sort of trial and error. So I was just wondering, how do you create an environment in your classroom where students feel like they can ask you questions and they're comfortable putting themselves out there, answering questions on the board? Like, how do you create that kind of environment?
One question that I love asking them is, what questions do you have? And then I'll wait, and usually no one raises their hands. And then I'll tell them that I expect them to have questions. And once they realize, oh, we're supposed to have questions, then they're more willing to ask because they realize, oh, this is something that she's noticed is challenging in the past. So telling them I expect questions makes them a little bit more willing to share. And something I started this year, which I didn't do last year, is I'll just take whiteboard markers and there'll be like 10 problems on the board and I'll just hand them out to 10 random students. And they get really nervous to put it up in case it's wrong. And I was like, there's 10 of you. No one's gonna know who did what. Just go, put it up there. All the markers are the same color. Like, it's totally fine. And the more accustomed they are to putting things on the board and then looking at it and seeing what edits can we make versus which mistakes do we see, they realize, oh, math, it's okay to make mistakes. We're just editing them instead of saying like, oh, it's wrong. It just needs to be edited and changed.
I'm so glad you do that with your students, and especially in a math classroom. I think it's difficult to create an environment where students feel comfortable, having the wrong answer or like maybe even like doubting themselves sometimes. So I'm so glad to hear that you do that, because it's so important for kids to know that they should be asking questions like you encourage them to do. But I feel like this extends beyond your students. I think that this also could be like applicable to your daily life and sort of having this pressure and stress to be a perfect teacher, even though it sounds like you are a really great teacher. So I don't know. How do you sort of navigate that? Do you feel like a pressure to be perfect, or do you have any fear of making mistakes, or like how do you sort of address that?
So I used to feel that pressure a lot, but now my students know that there's at least like one typo or one mistake a day, because I'm not the best speller, so there will be words misspelled sometimes in a worksheet, or I'll make a Google Classroom post and I'll spell something wrong. The word exponents, I always add another like en when I'm typing because I go too fast. So my students just know to expect a typo. Or in my answer keys, sometimes I'll forget a negative sign or I'll forget something. They know to expect it. And now like times like I'll double, triple check myself now just to make sure I don't do it. And they'll really look to see when I make mistakes, because then they're like, caught you. They're so proud of themselves. But then like sometimes we'll like talk through and be like, oh, is it a mistake? Is it not? And I think them seeing that I mess up too, it makes it more of an open environment for when they have questions or not. But I've gotten better with my mistakes. I take my time a little bit more.
It's okay. I'm sure that's like helping your students see, like you said, that it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody's human. We can't expect perfection all the time, but it sounds like you are striving to do the best that you can. So do you have like any time to talk to your the teacher? I know you said you have a really strong community with the teachers in the math department, but is there a way that you also talk to teachers, your like fellow teachers, to make sure that, if a student's struggling in your class, like there's open communication about different student struggles and you're able to sort of not have all that stress on you, but you're able to communicate with other people? Or how does that usually work in your school?
So there are days, I know people say to avoid the workroom because that's where people, or like the lunchroom because that's when people complain, or that's where the drama is. But my little lunch group, it's me and four other teachers, maybe 5 depending on the day. But we will get together and we'll just talk about things going on in the school, both positive and negative, or just things going on in our personal lives. And it is nice to share, like, if I have a struggle with a student, sometimes I'll express that to them because they have such good advice and they'll mention some things that I won't even think of. So I remember one time last year, at the end of the year, you go and you send like an update to parents about how students are doing and whatnot. And one of my coworkers was like, you could send emails and like send every parent the same email. But she emphasized for certain students who are borderline pass or failing, like call the parents. And that was such a good recommendation. I didn't want to. I don't like talking to people on the phone sometimes. It makes me a little nervous, especially when it's bad news. But that was such good advice to take. And I wouldn't have done it unless someone else told me. So I think talking to my coworkers is the best thing that I can do, especially when there's a situation where I don't always know how to approach it.
Yeah, I love hearing about that collaboration between teachers. I think that's super important, especially because you're still in your second year, you're still a young teacher, so it's nice to get advice from other people who have been in the profession for longer than you. I know you mentioned that giving some families a call at the end of the year was a good piece of advice. Is there any other advice that you received from those more veteran teachers?
So calling is always better than an email, especially if it's something negative. Something else they tell me is not to get too worked up over observations if they go good or bad, just because things happen that you can't control, and one observation isn't necessarily the end of the world. Or if your students do not the best they could on an assessment, and sometimes teachers like to internalize, sometimes it helps to think, okay, maybe, something could have changed along the line, but it's always better to look at like what we can do for next year versus overthinking the past, I would say. So they're very positive and like recommend me like reflecting on what I could always do better. And I think that's something sometimes we don't always do. It's easier to forget about it and like push it away, but it's something I'm trying to do more moving forward.
Okay. That's definitely a good piece of advice. And I feel like, especially like the calling too it's not something that I feel like the pieces of advice you just shared with us are not something that I always hear from my professors. So I'm glad that you said that. Thank you for putting that into the space. But I'm also wondering, not to switch gears a little bit, but just shifting, since you are in your second year of teaching and you did have experience with those at multiple schools, like how do you think that pre-service educators can, set a boundary with like the school and sort of like in the classroom, especially during those first years of teaching where, you feel like you have to do everything and there's just a lot more stress when you're still getting used to a new school and, your new job. So sort of during that period of, I guess, acclimation is the word I'm looking for. How do you think that pre-service educators can set boundaries and make sure that they're not going home with more work or, more stress and get burned out over a longer period of time?
I think my best recommendation is that it's okay to say no. Sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where people that teach the same subject as you might expect you to do stuff that they did in the past. Like maybe they want you to make extra versions of a test, or maybe they want you to help figure out a project. Or at my previous school, for every quiz and assessment we gave, they wanted me and the other new teacher to make like 2 or 3 new versions. And then like I would send my version and it wasn't good enough and they would have me redo it. And at that point I should have just been like, no, that's it. You can change it if you want to change it, and then you can send it back to me, but it's okay to say no. And like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, if they'll get mad at you, but that's okay. Another teacher isn't like your boss. So it's okay to say no when another teacher asks you to do something. If your math supervisor tells you to do something, like maybe you should do that, or the principal says that that's different, but it's okay to say no to your colleagues when they ask you to do something. Or it's okay to say no to being an advisor to a club if you don't have the time. Like, it's okay to say that. People can be disappointed, it's fine.
That's such real advice, and I could not agree more. Like, definitely if you can't handle something, like, it's okay to say that you just can't take it on right now, or just ask for a little bit of, like, some sort of grace period where I can do this, but I need more time, or whatever it may be. So, yeah, exactly. It's okay to say no, and what is the worst thing that can happen?
I think that's a really big part of it, like advocating for yourself and, like you were saying, not being afraid to say no. I think that relates a lot to your own self-care and just taking care of yourself. And that's a really hot topic right now, I think, in education, but just for everyone, being able to take care of yourself and practice different things throughout your day to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success for each day and every week. And so a question that I have for you is, are there any ways that you emphasize self-care in your classroom, or any ways that you practice self-care with your own students?
So there's some things I do at certain classes. One class I see towards the end of the day, and for them, we like to turn off one of the lights and then open the windows, get some fresh air, get a more comfortable setting. And some of my students make fun of me for this. This is totally random. I have like a collection of stress balls that I now have in my classroom.
Okay, yes.
Not because I love stress balls, just I've accumulated them over time. So every once in a while, like, a student will come in, they'll be upset about something that happened in lunch. I'm like, do you want the star? Do you want the smiley face? Like, I have a train stress ball. Like, which one do you want for the day? But I like to carry those. I like have those available for students when they're getting overwhelmed, because I do have some students that get like a little anxious sometimes. And then I've also started carrying one with me, like, in my bag, just because some students at bathroom duty come a little anxious. So I'm like, here's a little stress ball. Wash your hands first, but here. So I think, like, definitely, like, telling them, like, let's pause for a minute and then start back up again. Like, it's okay to take breaks, but then also starting the class on a good note by, like, opening the windows, turning off the lights, just seeing how everyone's doing before we start. That helps.
I think that's really important. And from a few of the classes I've observed so far, a lot of the teachers do prioritize making strong relationships with their students. But one thing that I have noticed is that not every student checks in with their class before the class period begins. A lot of teachers just jump right into it, which is understandable. There's a lot of content to cover in a short amount of time. But something that I definitely want to prioritize is checking in with my students at the beginning of each period and just kind of reading the room, seeing how everyone's feeling. So is there a way that you do that at the beginning of each period, or some classes?
Some classes, I'll have them turn to each other and ask, like, especially on a Monday, turn and ask the person next to you how their weekend was. There's some classes where we do start right away with, like, an entrance card, and that makes everyone stressed. So after the entrance card, I'll ask them all a silly question and have them debate, like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Or would you rather sit on a pizza or, like, a sandwich? Like, just something silly that you wouldn't ever debate with anyone. And it kind of lightens the mood a little bit before we start the day.
So is a hot dog a sandwich?
I don't know. Because the bread's connected. I don't know.
Okay. That's the debate.
I think my students said no. I think that was their consensus.
I guess we have to come in and debate that with them, because I don't know how I feel about that.
What I'm wondering is how you accumulated those stress balls while we're, like, talking about funny things. I'm wondering if you actually accumulated them, or if you, like, actually accumulated them in your Amazon cart.
No, like, I swear they were given to me. I think I used to have one over here that was like an NJEA puzzle piece one, but I got, like, a star from not from TC&J. I got a star from New Teacher Orientation. I won it as a prize. And then I have, like, a dice one for games. I have a smiley face. My sister gave me like a train, one that she got that's literally shaped like a train. And then my coworker at the first school I was at, she gave me a little dog one that was for Christmas. So
That's really cute.
I didn't know that this was such like I feel like a lot of these
This
are
is
also
like a
gifts.
big market.
Yeah, I didn't
Stressball.
realize that. I
I don't know, it's a thing. My students like laugh at me. Because some classes know I have it, some don't. So I go through the process of putting one up at a time on the desk.
Something I'm noticing is that you yourself and your classroom is definitely a safe space for students, and you do that through a variety of ways of checking in, opening the window to make it a more comfortable space, using stress balls. Are there any other tactics that you'd recommend pre-service teachers use to try to make their classrooms a more comfortable space and just a safe space for students?
I think, starting off the school year, like every class has their school rules. I've never tried this, or like the classroom rules. I've never tried making it as a class, but I know some people do that. And I think that's going to be something I do next year for my class. But I always tell them, like, my main thing in the room is that we are nice to each other and we respect each other. And if there's ever an incident, there was an incident this year where a student said something that wasn't respectful, and I did like approach that student and we had to talk about it, had to talk with mom about it on the phone, which also good to call versus send that email. I think just making sure students are comfortable no matter what, like that's the most important thing you can do. And that also includes, like, for me, having my room open to them at 7 a.m. and some of them will come and like sit down, because sometimes you get to school and your bus is early and you don't know anyone that's there yet. So it's nice to just have a place where you can reside until you have to be somewhere.
I like the fact that you said that you're going to try that again next year. Like, you're going to try to do the class rules with them next year, because I think that's literally pinpointing the idea that you don't have to be perfect from the start, So always reflecting and realizing maybe what would be better, what would work better with your students. And of course, when you also get your new students and you kind of feel what energy they're bringing into your classroom, you can kind of develop like better teaching strategies as you continue to go on. But that's great that you do that with them. So as a last part of this episode, I think it would be cool. Last week with Esther, we came up with like a community challenge that each of us were going to like do throughout the week. So I think it would be cool if all three of us came up with a self-care challenge for us to do. It can be personal, and then maybe our listeners will also jump in and like think of their own challenge that they can make. Yeah,
I think maybe something we can challenge ourselves to do, and our audience as well, is just making their space comfortable. That's kind of what I took away from you and you talking about your classroom. We talked about, like I said before, opening the window. I think natural light is so important, and I hope in my future classroom there's a bunch of big windows, because I love natural light. I love opening the windows. Having comfortable pieces for students to hold on to throughout class. So you mentioned stress balls. I know I've seen some teachers before have stuffed animals that are passed around the class. And that can be something that students can, see as like a safe thing that they can hold on to when they come into the classroom. I know a lot of teachers use music as a way to sort of calm their class. So just making your space as comfortable as possible, making it feel like a safe space for students. So that's something that I would say we can challenge ourselves to do for us more so in the future, but for any teachers right now, to try to incorporate that as much as possible in their classrooms.
I would agree. I think we should try to do that in our future classrooms in any way possible. I've also heard teachers, like in addition to the stuffed animals idea, I've also heard that teachers will keep a stack of blankets in case the room is cold. So I always think that's a cool idea. But stress balls, stuffed animals, and blankets, maybe snacks too. I feel like that's
always good.
That's perfect. I would say that I really liked the fact that you said that you read a little bit before you go to bed, so there's no like screen time, no work time. So I think that's something that I took away from what you were saying, and I would challenge myself to do that this week, because sometimes I will just kind of be like, okay, I'm gonna go brush my teeth and do whatever routine and then just head straight to bed. But taking the time to read a few pages out of a book that I have probably been trying to finish for the past 4 or 5 months would be nice.
Yeah. I would say my challenge, like close your school laptop by like 2 hours more than 2 hours before you go to bed. So if I'm going to sleep at 9, I make sure that thing is closed by 7. And if anything's not done today, it's not important to get done today. It's for tomorrow. It's like future Olivia's problem.
That was a really good piece of advice. Like having an actual time limit, a number to it, so that once it hits this time, I'm done and it can get done tomorrow. Like nothing is so important to sacrifice your sleep and ultimately your health like that. So that is really important and relates to what we were saying before about setting boundaries and self-care. So that was a good challenge.
100%. And like you said, I like the fact that you put a time to, like precisely 2 hours. I need 2 hours to myself to do something different. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Olivia. I know we said you're so busy and you have a lot going on, but I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your story and some advice with our audience. Do you have any last piece of advice you would like to share for our listeners?
I really don't know if I do.
It could be stress related or not stress related.
Maybe like
self-care.
Don't take yourself too seriously. Maybe like it's okay to mess up. It's okay to laugh at yourself in class. Like I almost fell the other day and I laughed about it, but just don't take it too seriously. Like it's just high school or elementary or middle school. Like it's just school.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Piece of advice. But thank you for talking to us. I loved getting to hear your experiences, and I hope that our listeners also maybe it takes some weight off of like hearing a real teacher's experience and just kind of hearing about your day-to-day, but also how you like manage the stress of every day. So thank you so much for coming and talking to us and sharing so much with us. And we are excited to make more episodes. Hopefully we'll talk to more teachers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And thank you again to Olivia for joining us. Please look out for more Motivational Monday episodes coming soon and more of these longer length episodes with guests who are going to provide you with important tools that you need to navigate your journey of becoming a future educator. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.